My dad always shirked his responsibilities when it came to his wife and his children early on because he got married at the age of 18. You know, after he got married, he kind of became basically what his father was, but he never knew. You know, he went out looking for love in all the wrong places. You know, so and that was the story of the early part of my life. I was just bouncing around through my mom's trauma. You know, my father was stabbed. I don't know. I was about a year and a half old, and he almost died. He was in the hospital. They were almost divorced, and all kinds of stuff was happening. And at the time, I was hanging out with my sister and my aunt because my mom was busy reacting to whatever my dad put her through.
Right.
You know, so but I have a real early connection to God, like early on. Not that I even knew anything about it. It was just a feeling.
How early? When you say early on, how early?
If I had to guess, around 4. I got memories as early as 3 years old, hanging out with my aunt. It was pre when she got married. I was in the wedding, and I remember that day. I remember things about that day.
No, but specifically to Jesus.
I didn't have to go to catechism, Sunday school until 5th grade. You know, I was baptized, and then it wasn't important to my mom to send me to school every Sunday to do that until I was in 5th grade. And then I started going with everybody in the neighborhood. We started going to Sunday school, and we'd walk there. And I made my communion in 6th grade and my confirmation in 7th grade. So I did the fast track. You know, I only had to go to catechism for 3 years. And then, you know, I go to church on all the Easter and Christmas and maybe 4 or 5 different occasions throughout the year. Church wasn't very important to me. You know, I mean, it was more of a personal connection, and I just know. And then when I started at 16, I got a little more into it. I had my own Bible, and I went the born again Christian route, and I believed it, what I was going through there, and then I flounder. You know,
Like us all.
I was a flounder from that, but through my mom and my connections and my father-in-law and my uncle, who is probably, besides Eddie's grandfather, the second most devout Catholic that we know, I would have to say, or that I know. I don't know about Eddie at this point.
Yeah, I guess besides priests.
Yeah, so then when my mom got sick and I started taking care of her, and Eddie was living in my house in Newark taking care of my dad, I noticed the presence of God in my life, and how much I needed to repent and come back, you know. And I was rewarded. You know, I got to spend the last few years with my mom before she passed. Spent a lot of time with her. Got to see my son John step up and help out, and we spent a few years hanging out together and taking care of business down here. It was a blessing. And then every time I ask God for something, I get it. You know, every time. And I didn't notice it early on, you know. But then Eddie made me read a book. It's what's the name of the book, Ed?
Was it How to Get Rich? It's like that.
The Science of Being
Oh, yeah,
Well, the Science of Being Rich, and the Science of Being. Anyway, it was a guy from 1909 speaking about God and the secret stuff. The secret stuff is the Holy Spirit, and talking to the Holy Spirit. All you have to do is be thankful, ask for what you need or what you want, know it's going to show up, and then it's that easy. It's the thinking stuff. That's what he was calling it in 1909. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that just clicked with me, and then I started putting it to the test with Grady. So
All right,
one day,
well, hold on. Let's stick to your parents, because on my channel I talked a lot about Grandpa, and there's another side to it, which isn't just Poppy, my other grandfather, your dad, and Mima. They had there was a lot of trauma and tumult in your life past 16. So why don't you go into that a little bit? Because you start going to church, but then a couple years later,
Well, thinking about it as a 61-year-old, from before I knew how to absorb what was going on to me up until my brother was murdered, I was aware of the stuff going on around me, but my defense mechanism was tuning it all out by being absorbed into the television set. So while all this stuff is going on around me, I'm absorbing it, but I'm not able to respond to it. I'm telling stories in kindergarten about it, telling my kindergartners how my dad got stabbed, not realizing if it was true or not, because I didn't see him get stabbed. I just heard the stories, and for all the people I was telling the stories to at 5 years old, what could they be thinking about what I'm telling them? So I remember my very first nightmare. I'm sitting in the kitchen with my mom, and there's a whole bunch of Vietnamese guys trying to get me. And my mom was just sitting there, and she wouldn't do anything about it. And they got me, And I'm sure that's because I was being absorbed into the news, into the television that was showing up in between my cartoons or whatever. So where were we?
yeah, Fred, why don't you jump in here? He said a bunch of different things. Take it wherever you want.
Well, it's very interesting to me, only because I'll go back to your early sense that you were just going to be okay. You said you felt that at 3 years old, and it stayed with you. Was it present with you throughout all of that you were going through? Like, did you always have that sense?
When I was in high school, my dad had to go to prison for racketeering and Shylock and taking bets, stuff that's legal now. Anybody could do it, but at the time, he had to go away, and he was in right before he went away. They let him go to my graduation, and then they put him in. If you watch The Sopranos, you see it. They put him in the trailers, and it's like a little country club for a little bit before they do their time and get back out. But it happened right at the time I was graduating. I graduated high school. My brother just moved back home, and he was living in the basement. He took my spot, and he had no license. He was didn't know how to pick his friends at a young age. He was 7 years older than me. He saw a lot more stuff than I saw because he was older. When I was an infant, he was actually going through it. And we bonded for a very short time talking stuff, and he told me about the time he was almost died. And I remember it. He was in Claramass Hospital for a couple of weeks. He was bumper riding a bus, fell off the back, cracked his skull, and the doctor actually came out. And told my dad he was dead. And my dad said, "You better go back in there and save him." And he did. So I remember thinking at that time, wow, imagine if he died. What my life be like now? Imagine if he died. And then a week later, he was murdered in New York City. And I remember thinking, it's my fault. Shouldn't have had that thought. But I never cried at the time. My uncle told me, Uncle Ed, that's why he's your godfather, because he's the one that broke the news to me that my brother was dead. So that's it. There's a God. He teaches us lessons. And I'm still okay.
Fred, any other questions? That was a good one.
What'd you do that for? Stop.
That's amazing.
So that's my uncle Eddie, who I never met. So that's who I'm named my namesake.
Okay.
So like I feel a lot of that trauma comes through generations, you know, and the trauma that my grandfather felt, you know, and the stuff he went through. That's tough. That's tough.
Yeah, that's heavy. And
Yeah.
it's the interesting thing too is, just how, varied people's lives can be. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of trauma that some folks go through, and the faith is always there. It never wavers. Sometimes it may dip, it may come forward, but there's it's amazing to me how that carries people through. And then there's folks that kind of cruise through life, and that life is pretty kind of comfortable, and it just seems to me the more traumatic and the more hardship that people go through, I think that's when he's screaming at us. And then when things are quiet and comfortable, there might be whispers, and we might not even hear it with all the noise, that we're busying ourselves with in our comfortable lives. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'm explaining that right. There's points and times where the pull and the call is very strong, very loud, and then it's very subtle.
Yeah,
And that's
these trauma points, they're forks in the road. It's where things are different now, and it's not going back to the way it was. Once your brother's gone, you're not the same person. You're different, and you could take it one of two ways. You know, you could take it down the bad path, or you could take it down the good
yeah,
path. And you know, you have a bunch of these in your life, and sometimes you take the good, and sometimes you take the bad. You want to do more good than bad, obviously. But this trauma that happened to my dad directly led to me. I feel like there's a direct line of that to my dad's epiphany that, you know what, this could end. You know, he's seen it. So now we need to get things in motion. I have things to do. And having kids was on top of his list.
That's what I wanted the most. So I was on a mission to find the best girl I could find. I needed somebody smarter than me. I couldn't get through grade school. I was skinny your teeth guy, you know, just enough. Still that guy. Still just
yeah,
enough. So the best thing ever happened to me was meeting Eddie's grandfather. He was, you know, my father influenced me a lot and still does to this day, but so does Eddie's other grandfather. He is the role model that I am happy that he is picking up after.
Yeah, that's that. But tell the story. So what did he do that made the change? Because once you met my mom, you know, things went where they went. You want to get married to her and pick up from there.
Yeah, well, he didn't like me until I asked him if I could marry her. He basically was standoffish with me, you know. But then once I got his blessing, he said, "Hey, listen, now that you're marrying my daughter, you want to be a fireman." And nobody ever told me that before, even though I had firemen in my family. All the guys my father played softball with, half of them were firemen in Newark, the place I finally landed. But none of them said, "Hey, be a fireman." My uncle Gerard, actually, I remember it, handed my brother application to become a fireman in Newark when I was a senior in high school. I wasn't old enough yet, and it still didn't occur to me that I wanted to be a fireman until my father-in-law told me that that's what I wanted to be. And then I was like, okay. And then that was one of the times that I just knew I was going to be okay. You know, there's certain things that happen along the way. My dad always bought me anything that I wanted. It was his way of making up for the time that he didn't spend with me, you know. But if I wanted something, he would override my mom and I would have it. You know, he bought me every car that I owned up until I was 21 years old. And I remember I wanted this Camaro. I was passing by the how am I going to get this to my Camaro? I make $4 an hour. I work 20 hours overtime to make money. I can't afford this Camaro. I want this Camaro. How am I going to get it? I'm working in a restaurant. I'm a cook. I smell like garlic. I don't know if I met Eddie's mom yet, if she started at the restaurant that I was working at yet. Because the moment she walked in, she became a hostess at the place. I was a cook, and I remember seeing her, and I said, "Wow." So I wanted to meet her. So I walked out and I said a couple things to her, but I never had the nerve to. She was working there for like a month, and I never had the nerve to walk up to her other than to say a couple words. And then, out of nowhere, my dad dreams of a number, says it while he's sleeping. My mom writes it down. And within the next couple weeks, he hits the lottery with the number, two different versions of it, the pick four and the pick three. He hits the pick four first he bought 10 tickets. So he hit it for about $30,000. The very the very next day, he hit the pick three with the same version of numbers minus a zero or whatever the number was that he took out, and hit it for $8,000.
Yeah, but what year is this?
1984.
So it's like
Yeah,
that's a lot of money.
what's that in today's money? I
That's
wonder.
that's over 100 grand. That's like close to 200 grand. That's a lot.
Is
Of,
it?
inflation is at least 130. Yeah, for sure.
Holy smokes!
So that's a nice little hit.
Yeah. So next thing I know, he's bringing me to the car dealership, and they say, "I'm not going to buy you the car, but I'll put the down payment on it for you, and then you got to pay it off with your job." And then we bought stock in possibilities. And I got out of the kitchen and I got into the front of the house. I became a waiter because of my stock options. Now I'm moving up the ladder. And I'm driving this car, but I still hadn't asked Eddie's mom out yet. But now I'm high on the hog. I'm no more cook. I don't smell like fish. I'm driving a Camaro. And my ex-girlfriend, who I was pining for the past 3 years, broke up with her boyfriend. I'm dating her again. But I really want Eddie's mom. That's what I want. But I got the girl in my dreams back that I was chasing. I said, you know what? A guy that's successful has a better shot with the girl that he wants than a guy that's not. So I brought this girl that I got back with to a party that I knew Eddie's mom was going to be at. Got drunk, started flirting with her, and the girl I brought there, I purposely made her bring her own car because I told her I was working in the morning. I was probably going to get drunk and just stay at the party. So I was flirting with his mom. She was flirting with somebody else. She left, and I threw up on his mom's shoes.
That's a good move.
Yeah.
That's definitely sets the hook right there. That's it.
I went upstairs, took a shower because before I threw up on her shoes, I asked her if she would ever consider dating a guy like me. And we were hitting it off, So after I threw up, I went up, I sobered up, I took a shower, I brushed my teeth the best I could, and I talked to her till the sun came up, sobering up. And then I took her out on Friday night. That was like the middle of November. We watched Rudolph together in the beginning of December. I think that's when we started like dating for real. She invited me up to watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer at her college dorm, all girls dorm, College of St. Elizabeth. So that was the beginning. I was high on the hog, driving the Camaro with the hot chick I was dreaming about for a couple months. And I hadn't talked to the girl that I bought there. I stopped calling her. She was in the past. It was time to move on. Even after I was pining for her for 3 years, trying to get her back. It was move on.
All right, then what happened to the Camaro?
It turned into an engagement ring and an apartment. Because I fought with my dad after he was blowing it with my mom. He had needed somebody to take it out on. But it didn't dawn on me that it might have been because Eddie's uncle, I lent him my car and he came back without it. I had to claim it stolen. and get the insurance money. Got the insurance money, bought an engagement ring. My father came home, snapped on me, so I went and got an apartment. I moved to North Plainfield and became a car salesman, a bad car salesman. I no longer had a car because it was stolen. I took the money. I didn't buy another car. I just bought an apartment right next door to the car dealership that I just got a job as a salesman. Never been a salesman before. And I could walk to work. My plan was to sell 15 cars a month to get a demo. First month I sold 10, didn't get there. But Ed's mom would come pick me up, and so I did this for 3 months, and then I couldn't be a car salesman no more. But my mom came back from Florida after being there for 4 months, and I think she gave my dad one more shot. I don't know what they were going through at the time together, because I was with Eddie's mom trying to figure out where we were going. But in the meantime, now I'm a waiter. I go over to Bennigan's. I become a bar back. Girls are flirting with me like nobody's business.
You still had hair back then.
Yeah, I was. So, it took me a little while. I met Eddie's mom. I wasn't legal yet. I wasn't able to drink. I was 20 years old, coming up on my 21st birthday. So I was a mess. Didn't know it. What else you want out of me?
Where you want to go, Fred? Anywhere you want to take it.
That's good. So how far after that did you become a fireman, and did that kind of settle you down when you became a fireman? Or
Oh, no.
no?
Becoming a fireman from start to finish, first I married Ed's mom. I married her in 87, and I moved her to Florida, and I became a bartender in Florida, waiting for the test. Now, the application for the test was until May 1988. I married his mom in November of 87. So I had 6 months before I even could fill out the application. So we moved to Florida for 6 months, and I wanted to always become an artist. So my plan was to become a fireman and then to become an artist while I was a fireman, which that's what I did. But in the meantime, I don't know where it was.
You're going to be a fireman.
When you work in the busiest firehouse in Newark, my first year I worked with a captain that there's absolutely no drinking. He's straight as straight can come. But everybody in the whole department that thinks this guy's the biggest asshole on the job.
Try to watch your language, though.
I'm working. Sorry. Apologize. I think I'm in the firehouse. When in the firehouse, you have firehouse language. I don't usually, Anyway.
It's just the perfect way to describe them.
Now you interrupted me. I forgot where I was again.
All right, so you're working in the busiest firehouse. How come you can't?
Well, I wasn't in the first year and a half. I was working in the slowest firehouse with a captain that really didn't want to go to fires. So I was told in the academy and hung out with all the guys that worked in the busy firehouses, and I didn't want to be the best fireman on the team that I created for firefighters and the worst fireman. I just didn't want to be the worst fireman, the best softball player. So I knew I had to get someplace where I could learn how to be a fireman, because as you could tell, I'm no brain surgeon. I told myself early, I can't read. I couldn't get through any school. So better go to a busy firehouse to learn the skills needed to keep myself safe on the fire ground, because I'm not going to learn them through books and going to 3 fires a year. So I made the decision to go to a busy fire company where all the lunatics were, and I worked with them for the next 13 years.
Why would you call them lunatics, though? What do you think made them?
Well, the first group of guys that I worked with...
He tried to keep it PG. He's going through things in his head that he can't say.
Well, debauchery, things that they...
Yeah, keep it vague, but yeah, descriptive.
Christmas parties weren't Christmas parties. Christmas parties were like going to the go-go bar. They would hire their own talent, and it was anything goes, Some firehouses...
But that how far back did that tradition go? Because that wasn't how it always was. Do you think?
Well, when we were reading the newspaper articles from 1900s, there were guys that were accusing other guys in the newspapers of that behavior. So it was public in 120 years ago. What do you think? It's been going on forever. In the 1800s, when Newark was still a volunteer company, they had to close the firehouses down for 2 weeks, get rid of all the scum that was living there because it was volunteer, and then start a semi-paid system so that they could at least get people that were there that weren't the dregs of society, I guess. But it takes a special mentality to run into a burning building, to put your life on the line. And a lot of the guys, the way they dealt with it was red wine and whiskey. And they run into things that nobody else will run into. And some of the bravest men you'll ever see, and you got to survive in that environment and thrive.
Yeah. So this is perfect. So what he's describing here is you have to have a mix of that chaos with professionalism, right? So what he's talking about is a lean towards chaos when my generation is an overcorrection towards professionalism, and I think you need a balance of it.
You can't be doing the things that these guys did in the 70s. You can't. And some still do. There's pockets of it, and there shouldn't be. But it's a learning thing when you go to a busy house and those guys are doing what they did in the 70s. In the 90s, it wasn't burning like the 70s, so you didn't get away with as much because you made more money. In the 70s, the guys didn't make money. They did it for benefits. They made their money on their part-time jobs. When they got to my generation, we were getting raises and based on the stuff that they did. And they got to go out on top. The guy that made his bones, he was the senior guy in my company. He didn't really teach me anything because by the time I got there, he was ready to go out the door. I didn't see I just heard the stories over the glasses of wine while he was telling me. I used to call my Captain Six Pack. During the day, Captain come in, he's all business. He used to have his bars out and they were doing rounds. They're going to show, he's just going to show everybody that he's the captain in the neighborhood. Come night, he'd bring in his six pack, and that was it. That's all he wanted, six pack. It was. My father used to come home every night and have his six pack of Heineken. My mom would pop open the six pack. It's not a big deal, but I was there to learn the job. Next guy that came in after Pete, he didn't drink, so we didn't drink together. So it was a different atmosphere, and we got to go to a lot of fires. So I was working at that firehouse with that crew when 9/11 hit. We went over there that day. The guys that I work with, a couple of them.
Yeah, but go back to when you're actually learning the job because there's a lot of chaos going on when you're in the firehouse. But once you're on the fire ground, talk about that tradition of what that's like.
I just learned the mechanics of it. I didn't learn the dangers that I should be looking for. So when I first got to the busier houses, I depended on the chiefs and who everybody else told me were the guys that I wanted to surround myself with. I just kind of trusted them. I didn't trust the guy that told me not to drink in the firehouse, my very first captain, and adamantly against it. My next captain that came in to the slow firehouse, he was a 6-engine replant hero on the hill, come down to retire. So I went from the strictest captain on drinking to the guy that was singing a cappella in the bay, and I'm the lead, and here we go, So that was my introduction to it's okay. Now Mike's doing that right next to the other guy, where it's absolutely not okay. So the one guy's got a hook with the director, the other guy's got a hook with the rest of the department. Everybody loves him. So who do I hook up with? I hook up with the guy that everybody loves, and he gets me my spot on where I need to get from singing a cappella.
Right. So, but when you listen, this is a big part of it because when you're talking about is networking, like trusting which expert. That's a big problem in our society today. Is people want us to always trust the experts, but then they point us to the wrong ones. So you're looking for the experts that are going to keep you safe, the people that have a good reputation, and you've seen it confirmed. So you're saying that most of your fire, like before you started getting the books, that was most of what your firefighting training was.
That's what I convinced myself was the way I was supposed to train, and I didn't learn that that was wrong until the buildings fell. That was the eye opener for me. You know, I had an attitude before the buildings fell was I'm not studying. I went to 100 fires last year. I'm going to go talk to you. You went to 3, but you've been in the books. How are you going to judge what I know? Screw that. I don't care. And that's why it took me an extra test and the building to fall to realize that I knew nothing about what I was doing to that point. I only knew that I had big balls and knew how to trust people that maybe didn't even deserve my trust. So now what? Now you better be able to trust yourself. And then when your son tells you that he wants to follow in your footsteps, then that's real oh shit. Because you know, you've seen it.
Did you feel like you could? I mean, did you at that point? Did you want Eddie to do that? Were you? What was going through your mind when that happened?
Within 2 weeks, I bought him a house in Newark so that he can follow through. First, I asked him, are you sure? Are you definitely sure? Because this isn't a one-time try. If you're trying, we're trying. And he convinced me that he was going to try. So I put all my money on it. We made it happen. And I'm proud of him. But we got to stay safe together. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm still buying in because me and him studied together.
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff I picked up from my dad, you could say is finding the right mentors. That's a word that I've learned since the '90s. Because he was watching Tony Robbins, and we were learning from that. And one of the big things is mentors. You got to find somebody that's doing what you want to be, like the end result. And we mixed Jesus with that. Like we found godly men to follow in certain aspects. In the fire department, it's a little harder to find those guys. That's why my grandfather's kind of an anomaly because that's the same in New York City. It's the same kind of mentality back in the day with the experience. Like we have the experience, which trumps everything else. Your books, our experience trumps your books.
So your father-in-law, Eddie, your grandfather, he was in New York at the time. Was he was active and working in New York during this
Yeah,
time
he was,
that
well,
you
no,
joined?
he was a fireman. He started in 1959, and I think he retired in 96.
Okay.
So when he retired in 96, he gave me his helmet. He said, "Here, I don't need this no more." So I had his helmet, and I painted, and I was wearing it around for a little while, and then 9/11 hit, and he was. I didn't think about calling my father-in-law. I called my firehouse, and I went with the guys at my firehouse, and we got over. And then when I got back, I got the call from my father-in-law. I was like, what'd you do? How come you didn't call me? And what are we going to do from here? And so we went the next day together, and he totally revamped his career from where it left off in 1996 and started working for the fire department again from that day forward in the counseling unit. And so he's my hero.
What was there? Because I'm really curious. Because you said your grandfather, that it seems like his faith was always strong, and it sounds like working in that kind of environment. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of like. Is there a lot of discussion about that? Is there any kind of talk about faith or spirituality or any of that stuff, or is that just kind of like you're singularly focused on just getting through each call? Like, what kind of an influence did your father-in-law have during that time?
Yeah, with that, I want to ask one thing because now the rules now is it's not allowed. You're not even allowed to talk religion, politics, any of that stuff in the firehouse. It's
Really?
not allowed. Yeah, I'm
Wow.
sure it was a little more
Wasn't
lax.
allowed then either.
Yeah, right.
There's
Okay.
a there's it's against our it's against the general orders. You're not allowed to talk politics, anything in the firehouse. So, but we still do.
So that's kind of like written in there. Like, there's just none of that.
Yeah,
It couldn't have always been that way because the type of people that were firemen, especially in the early 1900s, it was a certain type of dude, like immigrants and stuff like that. And the immigrants had faith. It was more of a Catholic society, especially in Newark. They had a couple of big Catholic centers. So like these guys were, even though they might not have talked about it, they kind of just lived it out. And that's kind of what my grandfather did. He wasn't talking about it. He was just kind of living it, and people knew.
He was talking about it. He told me, "Listen, you got to go to church every Sunday. You're.
No, I'm saying your family though. Was he saying that to people in the firehouse?
I'm. If he's going to pray with prisoners in the, yeah, when he's doing his rehab stuff, that's what he's doing. That's why he's in the rehab unit, because he's going to teach. What do you think him and Ralph are talking about?
Well, I was talking to Ralph about it, and Ralph said they kind of hid it. They still had to hide it. There wasn't like an open kind of deal.
All right. Well, there's your answer then.
Yeah, we got to talk to Ralph again too.
That's another thing. Like, I was talking to my wife recently about, like rehab programs and stuff like that. Aren't they all pretty much faith based at this point, or are they not? Like, I don't know enough about it. I thought it was.
Nah, it's more therapeutic. It's more like the therapy angle.
Well, I don't know about that, Ed, because when they say, "Hey, you're going to do the employee assistance program," how you going to deal with this employee? You have to introduce him to the union and how to get him back and to defeat his demons. You're supposed to point him to maybe faith. So you can do it, I guess, through the unions, through your.
Yeah, but what we're talking about though is more on a day to day, like living in the firehouse kind of thing. That's not really. I mean, it is like he said, it is talked about, but it's just. I don't know. In my generation, it's not as much though. I just think that's the way society is. It's kind of gone away from it. I think it's coming back towards it though. I have been seeing things in my own life it's given me more hope. But from a firefighting aspect, a lot of it is through experience and going through the fire. That it's in some way, doesn't that, like you always told me, like I asked you how nervous you used to get, especially before I was a fireman. Like, do you get nervous when you go to these fires? And after a certain point, you say you're not even nervous. Like, do you find comfort in fighting fire well?
It's not. See, I wouldn't have that same confidence if I was a police officer, because there's bullets flying at me, and there's certain things that I don't want, and that's one of them. But on the fire ground, sans 9/11, I'm a numbers guy. I'm playing percentages, So I know with my brain, I should be able to keep myself or through my career, I was convinced that I could at least skew it in my favor of things not happening to me. And in my career, there was a handful of times that I almost bit the dust. The first one was an MVA. The second one was me being retarded and not paying attention to my surroundings when I heard the bells coming in. And then I don't really even recognize a third being that close as when I almost got run over because I ran across the street not looking. And luckily I didn't stop because the cars were doing very fast, and I seen them both in my peripheral, and I just kept going, and both of them just missed me. And the second one, I was on a bridge driving in the rain with the guy that the captain before him wouldn't let drive because he was horrible. New captain come in, and I'm transferred over to the engine as a cross training, and we're driving on a cobblestone street in the rain. Old 109 bridge, 50 feet above the ground level. It's like a on-ramp. And we drive headfirst into the railing. And when the rig stops, I'm looking at a 50-foot drop, nothing but rocks. I don't know how I had the strength to hang on. And that was a year on the job, year and a couple months. So I got those things to think about.
So it's like a threshold. Like you increase the threshold of how scary something was so that other things are less scary. Like this isn't as bad as my worst thing. I think that's part of trauma too, is I have a really high pain threshold because of what I went through when I got hit in the head with the baseball. Like I still to this day have never felt a pain like that. And I think emotionally and spiritually, my dad's gone through a lot of those bumps and bruises. So it's like a bone when you kind of break it a little bit and then it grows back. And like we've been hardened in that way to absorb a certain amount of trauma.
You develop, like almost like a resistance or something, right? Like a tolerance. You have just such a high tolerance.
Yeah, but another problem with that is we've taken a lot of bumps and bruises to get where we could have got there earlier without them. A lot of self-inflicted ones are the ones that I know I harp on, and my dad's harped on them a lot. Certain mistakes where you're like, man, I wish I could have had that one back,
Yeah.
but you learn from it.
I got a lot of learning from mistakes. It's just the way I learn.
So if that's the way you're learning, you have to have a certain amount of tolerance, or you're just not going to be
Yeah.
successful. And I think that the faith, right, Dad, you would give the faith more credit now. It wasn't you. I don't think you understand what faith was, but you had it already, and it kind of pushed you through all that.
It always works out for a Wilson.
That's
That's
our
what that
motto. It's a
means.
family
That's what
motto.
that phrase means. That's what it means, and I recognize that that's why. Everything I ever wanted at Camaro, I got it. I asked for it. I got it. I wanted to be a fireman. I just knew I was going to make it. I wanted you to be a fireman. There you are. So
So throughout all this, what I guess my question's more centered around prayer. Like, what was prayer like for you? Was there a prayer life? Like, was it actively like, you know, um, knowingly, intentionally, or was it more just sort of speaking?
I, I,
What did that
I
look
don't
like?
I don't like get on my knees and pray, although I probably should for all the blessings that I've had. I kind of just know if now I like the message at the Pentecostal church. Not that I think of Catholics, Pentecostal, and all that stuff. I don't differentiate. I think Christian and only Christian. I have Catholic memories. I remember the very first time my sister brought me to Catholic church. I had to be around 3 years old. We were living in that same place where I had my first memories, Magnolia Street in Belleville. And she went up and she received the host, and they were going to give it to me, but I was only 3, and my sister wouldn't let them give it to me. But why would they want to give it to me if I was only 3? But I wanted it, you know.
Mm.
So I remember that memory. But I don't ever remember my mom bringing me to church ever until I was 16 years old. And that was Full Assembly of God in Livingston. My dad bought me my Camaro, my first Camaro when I was 16. Before I turned 17, I have a permit but no license, and my mom says, "Hey, you can drive me to church every Sunday." So every Sunday I would drive her to church in my Camaro. So that was a good way to get me to start going. And then the pretty girls that were in church up there that I've never met before was a way to keep me going. I got a crush on one immediately, Ann Lil. And Lil through Stell. Yeah. And when I got my license, the first trip I took with it that I took with solo was up Route 10 to Ann Lil's house, and it took me 45 minutes to get there. We only dated a short time, but but that's when I thought I became born again Christian. I did what we did in the youth groups together, and I believed. I thought at the time, but what came afterwards, I don't know. When did I really start believing? Like I said, I always believed, but I remember the first time I felt remorse for something, and a commercial I would see on TV would remind me of all the bad things that happened to me in my life. It would trigger the arguments with my mom and my dad had. Like, I remember the first time I stole something was because the kid down the street, we got on the bus, and he was a shoplifter. That's what he was. He lived a couple doors down. And this is the first trip to Bloomfield Center I took with him, and everybody stuck a Hot Wheels in their pocket. And I remember that every time I saw this commercial, I would have so much disgust with myself for that, you know? So, and I know that God was looking at me. It had to be that's why I was feeling remorse. So I don't know. I think as a young kid, you don't know what that is. Now looking back on it, it's something. What is it?
The Holy Trinity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that strong sense of right and wrong, like you know it inside your heart without anybody kind of telling you. That was kind of part of my epiphany too. So would you consider yourself like non-denominate? Like, how would you characterize yourself?
When Eddie all of a sudden come back to his faith in Jesus Christ, he came back hard Catholic,
Yeah,
like
real hard.
like
But Dad, hold on. Let's pause right here. You're talking about a point which is true, but that wasn't when I first initially came back to Jesus in general. We would talk about Bible stuff, but there was a point where I shifted and I opened the catechism, and I'm like, all right, everything in here we believe now. And it was. I came on abrupt.
Well, I watched your episode and how you explained to Eddie that you can't be abrupt. You kind of have to kind of live it, but kind of not force feed it on other people. I get that kind of right from what you were saying.
No, 100%. I mean, like that's kind of like my issue, right? And again, just you watched it, right? This is all very new, right? So there's a bit of an upheaval and kind of it's like a seismic shift in the family too. So there's and here I am, like I'm absorbing all this stuff because I have this desire to learn and I'm trying to, educate myself and I'm taking all this in and kind of drinking from a fire hose kind of thing. And like I have a tendency to sort of be like, well, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. And I just learned this. And I just like, I want to talk about what I'm learning. And I want to talk about what, I'm coming to realize and what I have to kind of remember is people are in different spots, and I'm 57 years old. I've 30 years married, a whole family, grown kids. And all of a sudden I'm like this different person. So I have to realize like people are in different spots and while you're walking that line between sharing the gospel and trying to speak truth, but you also have to be as they say, what, gentle as a dove, cunning as a serpent, right? Like,
Well, that's how my father-in-law used to talk to me after Eddie was born. And my second son, John's born. We were living up in Kenville, Fairmonte Avenue. And he said to me, hey, listen, I know I lent you money to buy the house. If you take your son to church every Sunday, you don't have to pay me back. I said to him, I'm going to pay you back. But I'll go to church on Sunday as much as I can. That's when we started to go to the church that Mima was going to in Paramus, the one that Eddie doesn't like to go downstairs all by himself. His grandfather used to listen to this guy, Rizzo, and as of 2022, he was still giving sermons over there because I looked him up on the internet and I listened to something that he was saying. So I know he was, as of 2 years ago, still a little active. But that's where my mom was going. His grandfather would go to Catholic church every morning and listen to Rizzo while he's doing his taxes. He would be down in the basement listening to Rizzo for hours. He had a radio show. So he listened to Rizzo every day. He went to church every day, listened to Rizzo every day. And he would tell me, listen, you got to bring Eddie to church. So fast forward to Eddie's living in Newark, and don't know what he's going through, but he asked me, what do I think about religion? And I don't know exactly how he said it. I think he said, what if there isn't Jesus Christ or God or whatever he was asking me that day? And I said to him, what if there is? And that's why your grandfather wanted me to go to church, because of these doubts, and I feel responsible that I put the doubts there because I didn't bring you to church. And now I feel the same way about my daughter and my son, John. It's probably my fault. So
That's why my dad's good. See, he's taking responsibility. It's not his fault. Everybody's on their own path, but yeah, you have a part to play in it. I mean, we don't play our part perfect. So here, let me lead you.
Go ahead.
That's the past, right? Now we love Jesus, all of us. What's the future? We kind of leaned into a little bit, but what does it look like for you in faith?
I'm just going to keep counting my blessings and see where this path brings us. My mom lived it right in front of me. I watched her. I watched your grandfather. I have one Bible. I gave Eddie the other one. She had two. She highlighted the one that I gave Eddie more than she highlighted mine. But as I'm taking care of my mom, that's why they do it. If we do it, they'll absorb it. So, her early trauma led her on her path. And then when Eddie's grandfather moved into our basement after he got out of jail, he was putting me through some stuff with my second wife. But my second wife and my father were two of a kind, and they knew each other's kind. And so when it was time to go, I left Eddie with my father where he can get to know him. I thought that was important. More important than kicking my father out because he was upset in my spot. So I had to go through the lesson with my second wife because I had so many demons that I needed to exercise. And they were there for a long time. And it showed me what I needed to fix in myself more than anything. And I probably got put through that purposely by God. Period. The end. From when I almost lost Eddie, it's just everything's a blessing now. That's except I picked 1,500 miles, 1,200 miles away from my family. I kind of feel like I cursed myself because I made this decision a long time ago. So what are you gonna do?
So at the end of the day, you're saying the future looks bright.
The future is bright. The future.
No, the future's not here yet. So the
Every
present's
day
bright.
of
Yeah, I know you
is a
love it.
great day. So if
Right,
every
right, right.
day's a great day, tomorrow's a great day too.
Oh, good. Perfect logic. Fred, you got anything with all that he just said? But this is how my dad is. This is why I need somebody else here to just say, all right, what did you get from what he just said? Because he bounces around. I told him to talk about the future. He's still talking about the past. He's playing with coins, but I love him. He's got a very interesting story that I'm trying to share with my audience.
Yeah, listen, I mean that's what I'm taking from it. It's like, and it resonates with me a little bit because there is that like I said, I mean maybe very different upbringings. I don't know if I had necessarily the trauma that your dad, John, you've been through, but there is still a lot of regret, a lot of like I wish I could have done things differently. But Eddie, to your point, here we are, right? I mean, it's amazing how there's that sort of common thread of
I call it the grace of God. That's what it is. That's the common thread.
that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And I think that the key is what are we going to do today? Tomorrow will take care of itself. What are we going to do today? How do we approach every single day, and make the best of it and live the life that we're kind of, you know, that we want to live, that we're expected to live, and how do we impact those around us? That's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, aren't you impressed by my audience? That's Fred. He's
Well,
the audience.
what
And he's very, listen,
is what do you do for a living, Fred?
So I'm basically in security. I'm what they call an assets protection manager. So my job is basically like physical security, shrink, education and awareness, theft investigations, and things like that. So that's what I do. That's what I've been doing for my entire life.
So you have some sort of psychological background.
I'm a psycho, yeah, but no.
No, I mean like you said security, and I thought
I
that.
mean, I have a degree in criminal justice. I have a minor in sociology. I'm not,
Well, that's a
I'm not
minor in
like a
sociology. I dropped out of my psych class because I couldn't get a D. So but I do have the I guess 2 month shot that I took at trying to learn this stuff before I dropped out. But one of the things that I did learn was to bring my ex girlfriend to the party to meet my future wife so that she liked me better, and it worked. Look,
he's
That's
clever.
perfect
she
logic.
looks
Yeah.
just like me.
All's well that ends well, I guess, right?
All right.
I don't
Listen,
know how much that class cost my dad, but it
well,
obviously
worth it.
it taught me something.
All right. We're going to wrap this up.
All right.
I'm going to give each one final thought here. Dad, we're going to start with you. You've watched everything I've ever made, right? We could talk about content creation another day. My dad's been involved in content creation for 30 plus years, basically my whole life. And he's an artist, like painting pictures and stuff. Dad, where would you like to see this channel go? Because you watch every episode.
I like the fact that it's documenting everything that you're doing right now because you're on the right path. So for me, I don't want a tombstone. I want a legacy. And I got that. So now let's every day above ground. It's a great day.
It's all gravy, right? This is
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
gravy.
Once I got on the fire department, You know, I dropped out of 2 different colleges before I decided that I was going to go to Ducray. And I remember sitting on Salter Place in Belleville and sitting there with Eddie, knowing that I wanted to be an artist since I graduated high school, but kept dropping out because nobody showed me that you can just go to an art school. You know, I had to get through all the classes that I couldn't get through. And now I'm sitting there looking at Eddie, and I said, how am I going to teach this guy how to go after what he wants to go after if I don't go after what I want to go after? So I became the mentor for him that way. And then I just went looking for mentors through Tony Robbins, and I did it listening to Tony Robbins tapes while he was in the back seat. Everywhere I went, I listened to Tony Robbins and Howard Stern. And that was it. So that's all he knew for a while.
It's a weird combination. Very
I
weird.
was going to say that's
I'm a free speech guy.
kind of on opposite.
Howard's not a free speech guy anymore, so he's off of my.
Yeah, he was playing the free speech character in the 80s and 90s, and my
Yeah,
dad loved it.
I can't believe he made his bones on free speech. And he's
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to Howard Stern here. That
I'm
was
just
a good
saying,
intro.
saying.
All right, yeah, I got it. That's good. We'll talk more. All right, Fred. Same question, and also you have to give an audience review of my dad thus far, and tell us where we're headed. Because I take into account what you say, and it's been working out so far. I like it. I've been having fun.
Yeah, listen, I mean, it's kind of similar to our last conversation. Is I think the thing I really appreciate is the connection piece, like that personal connection. Like you're focused on making the connections. You're focused on, I think, bringing a message that people can actually use and things that they can actually, take action. I think that's the most important thing, right? Is giving people what they need to actually go out and live the faith, live the life. And you're shining a light on all the different ways that people can do that. So I think that's probably the thing I appreciate the most. And I'd love to see it just continue. And I think connecting people and letting them know that, hey, there are folks out there kind of in the same position that you're in and at the same spot that you're in. Some folks that maybe are a little bit ahead, some folks maybe a little bit behind, but we're all kind of moving in the same direction. And I think bringing people along and trying to ask people to reach back, help those who are behind them, bring people with us. That to me that's gold, regardless of anything else. I think that's.
Well, Eddie's grandfather got it right, visiting the prisons and sharing the word. That's and forgive me for this, but he had a captive audience. With his family, he did it every day at the kitchen table. He would read from the Bible. Listen, you're having dinner here. After dinner, we're all sitting around here, and this is what we're doing. It was so. He was a deliverer of the message throughout his whole life. He led by example.
Beautiful. That's exactly what I'm trying to go for.
Yeah.
And that's it. We did it, Daddy. We did it. I've been putting my dad on my channel for a while because sometimes we get into these these circles, and I don't know what other people would think. So having you here to kind of shift it where you think it's supposed to go, I think it really helped. And my
Listen,
dad's
I
shared a
got
few beautiful
ADHD bad. I got
ADHD. Of course. It wouldn't be an episode if my dad didn't mention the ADHD and how crippling it is. But look how successful you are.
About how I talk in circles. That's the reason why, because I see things in flashes, and then
Oh yeah, so you didn't give a review of my dad. What do you think of my dad?
Impressive. Just like, first of all, to do the job that you do, and to have gone through what you have gone through, and then again to throw on top of it that entire 9/11 situation, and to be where you're at and have the outlook that you have. That's impressive to me. That's I can only say thank you for sharing that stuff, and it's inspiring. I got to be honest, it's really inspiring.
yeah, I'm walking down the street 9/11, and I'm watching the guys that didn't die, and then the guys that had to call their family at the phone station, and I'm thanking God that I'm not one of them. So after seeing all that, anything that we're going through right now, it's not that. So
It's not that, and that's what. But it could be that, and even if it is, we have a journey that we're on, and it's towards the truth, the fullness of the truth. And that's what I'm trying to share. And thank you guys for helping me share it. And we're going to keep talking. And I think Ralph's next on the agenda. What do you think, Dad?
Yeah, I want to watch Ralph again.
No, you got to talk to him. I'm saying you got.
Oh, I'll talk to Ralph. Yeah,
Okay,
I'd love
good.
to talk to Ralph.
All right, that sounds good. I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks for tuning in. Check me out on YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment, interact with us. If you want to come talk to us, we're having a good time, I think. All right, so that's it.
I just want to thank you, Lord, for giving me the courage and the strength to carry on. Don't you know my life has been a book for you? Reading all the chapters, making mistakes my whole life through. I just want to thank you, Lord, for forgiving me